Good morning to everyone. Just a few words about myself. I'm working in the same unit as Yasmina. My basic education is chemistry, and I have experience in air pollution research of about more than 20 years. We'll start with regulation, which means the boring part of the air pollution and air quality research. But I think you have to know some basics because how to interpret those results and what some reports that are available to public really means. So Yasmina already said that what is air pollution? It is the presence of substances in the atmosphere in sufficient concentrations for sufficient time. So if we want to determine air quality standard, we usually do it as some statistical parameter, for example, average or maximum value or some kind of percentile value of some as a limit of the concentration, and it is always determined for a specific averaging time. But when we want to determine the threshold of harmful health effects or environmental effects, we face different issues. For example, if we analyze results of tests under control conditions in the laboratory, such tests usually include exposure to one or only a few compounds, and do not imitate in full real conditions, and also are not applicable for long-term exposure. In epidemiological studies, we have real conditions, but we have also numerous factors that can influence the study group. So sometimes it is very difficult to determine the effect of one single pollutant. It is also that the fact is that we are not exposed to these pollutants only by inhalation, but we can be exposed to them, especially, for example, to metals by consuming food or drink, or through the skin. What is also important to know, it is not possible to measure all pollutants in the air. We have thousands of species that can harmfully that can be harmful to health or to environment, and we can only measure a few of them. Usually we choose some compounds that are representative for some for the whole group, or they are representative of some pollution source. For some pollutants also there is no safe threshold below which there are no harmful effects. And also sometimes we are not aware that when concentrations are lower than some value set by legislation, that there could be some effects after a long year exposure, for example, 10 or more years. And it needs time to be aware of such effects. So the question is, who is setting these air quality standards? There are different working groups, but the first in that is World Health Organization, WHO. They regularly gather different scientific literature, scientific evidences on air pollution's impact, and they analyze these scientific results in different work groups by different kind of experts, systematically with very rigorous evaluation methods. And after such literature review and work of these groups, the results are air quality guidelines. The first guideline was published in 1987 and included a lot of, in that time, known pollutants, and also give some suggestions and recommendations for limit values for these pollutants. This guideline is periodically updated and reviewed. So a global update was made in 2005. And now the last one is from 2021. So these guidelines contain recommendations and suggestions for policy makers on national, regional, or city level to implement it in their regulations. So WHO is not the only body who do such kind of, for example, you have in United States their Environmental Protection Agency. Some countries have their own working groups, but they all analyze the same results, and those standards are often very, very similar and do not differ slightly. In this presentation, I will talk only about limit values, air quality standards that are intended for ambient air pollution, because we don't have time to talk about, for example, indoor air pollution or workplace atmosphere. And I will limit this to European Union legislation as well as legislation of Republic of Croatia. So European Union legislation is trying to implement World Health Organization guidelines. Currently, they are in force those directives here. The main document is directive from 2008 on ambient air quality and cleaner air for Europe. There is also in force directive from 2004 relating to metals and polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. And we have one from 2015, which is more relating to measuring methods, data validation, and exchange of information. Those directives tried to implement WHO air quality guidelines from 2005, but not completely, and the values from legislation are not the same as in guidelines. Why is that? You have to be aware that those limit values in regulations are in fact compromised between two types of costs. For one, we have costs of preventive measures and of pollution control. And on the other hand, we have costs of medical treatments and removal of harmful effects to human health and to environment. So basically, sometimes those standards are in the legislation are higher than WHO, because it will demand a lot of costs to implement some air protection measures. There is also that the problem that for some pollutants, it is not possible to say that there is no threshold below which there is no risk to human health. So for pollutants such as carcinogenic metals, arsenic, cadmium, nickel, or for example, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, WHO has not given guidelines, but only a risk assessment at certain concentration levels. So it is up to the policymaker to decide which risk is acceptable for them. So here you can see the comparison of current European Union legislation, their limit values in the law, and also WHO recommendation. As I said, you have usually some kind of limit concentrations, which is connected to the averaging time. Usually, as averaging time, it is 1 hour, 24 hour, 8 hour average, or daily average, or annual average. It depends on the pollutant and on these scientific evidences that are found. As you can see, for example, for SO2 and ozone, WHO values are much lower than those in legislation. The same is for PM10 and PM2.5. Here you can see that, for example, for PM10, averaging time is 24 hours, which means you compare daily averages or the annual average for the whole calendar year. For some pollutants, as nitrogen dioxide, benzene, and CO, the values in the legislation are the same as WHO guidelines. I don't have now time to discuss it in details. You can examine this table in the afternoon in the practical part. And I will show you in some examples of measurements in Croatia how we assess air quality according to these values. So what is new? Now we have new guidelines for 2021, which gives a much lower limit suggestion for, sorry, you have some kind of question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, if there are like guidelines from the European Union, but like, what is the consequence if if a country doesn't like reach the guidelines? Because you have, for example, it's only allowed for 24 days, that is higher than. What happens like if it's 30 days? Is there like a consequence for countries?
Yes, it has. It is okay. I will say that here because I also intended to say it later. But every country has an obligation to measure air quality, to make this data available to public, and to send a report to the European Union. If the quality of air is not good, if those values are exceeded, then each country or local community has to make action plan, which means to put in force some measure to reduce air quality. And they also send this plan to the European Commission. And for example, after 5 years, European Commission asks, how is air quality now? Did you achieve your goals? Because every citizen has a right to clean air. And for that reason, every country has to invest in measures to have clean air. So yes, for some, if the situation is not good, then you have to do some measures, and the Commission is monitoring the progress of this measure. Yes, as you can see, there are scientific evidences that those concentrations, limit values, should be much lower, and new air quality guidelines gives even lower concentrations, especially for PM10 and PM2.5, as well as the need of monitoring some new pollutants which are not included in previous guidelines, such as ultrafine particles and black carbon. And for that reason, there is a new European Union directive in preparation, and it should be enforced next year, because it will try to implement these new WHO guidelines through some kind of interim period. I think it was till 2030. They will try to reach those new air quality guidance values. So in Croatia, we had the Air Protection Act from 1995, very shortly after the Croatia gained its independence from Yugoslavia. But when we joined the European Union in 2013, we have to harmonize all legislation, all regulations with European Union legislation. So now are in force these acts that are listed here. We have Air Protection Act as a main document. Then we have regulation on levels of pollutants in ambient air. This regulation have a list of pollutants which should be measured and their limit values. Then we have ordinance on monitoring air quality, which prescribe the way how to do measurements, which means the list of reference methods which should be used, the quality of data, the location of measuring station, and so on, and also ordinance on exchange of information and reporting to the European Commission. So according to the Air Quality Act, in fact, in Croatia, we have defined two categories of air quality. First category, which mean clean air, when limit or target values are not exceeded. And the second category means that the air is polluted, that the limit or target values were exceeded for at least one pollutant. which means, for example, one pollutant is exceeded, that means the air quality is not good. Action plan has to be prepared, and the progress should be monitored by European Commission. What is important to know, categorization and assessment is done for each year separately. And it is very important to have sufficient data capture and sufficient time coverage. It is regulated, and for fixed monitoring stations, for most of the pollutants, that is requirement that we have to collect data for more than 90% day, which means during the year we have to measure at least 330 days to only in that case we can say that the categories the first and the second, because all other measurements will be only we will look at them only as indicative measurements. But also for such indicative measurements, there is also some minimal time coverage, at least 14%. That means about 60 days per year that have to be representative for various meteorological conditions and anthropogenic activities. Usually such indicative measurements are carried out, for example, for 15 days each season, or for example, 30 days in summer, 30 days in winter. Why is that? Because the concentrations of all air pollutants show variations over the year, over the day. It depends on anthropogenic activities. For example, traffic for NO2 has variations depending is it working day or weekend. Then some pollutants had higher concentrations during winter, during heating season. While also it depends on meteorological conditions. When meteorological conditions are such that there is no wind exchange in the area, concentrations will be high. And in days when you have some kind of precipitation and in fact wash up through the rain from the atmosphere, then the concentrations of pollutants are low. So for that reason, if you want to assess air quality, you have to collect enough data. Also, there is very important how to do this air quality monitoring. So I already said that the one ordinance prescribe methods of measurements as well as who can do these measurements. Why is this so strictly? Because those if you have to measure with in all our laboratories in the European Union have to measure which methods that are the same, with the same quality control procedures, with the same quality to be comparable. Because this categorization will reflect later costs for some countries if the air quality is not good. In every country, we have two types of laboratories. Referent laboratories, they have to be accredited in accordance with the norm 70,025 for the reference methods, and they in Croatia they have to have permission of Ministry of Economy and Sustainable Development. And those laboratories take part in the international quality assurance programs and also organize such intercomparison within the country. Testing laboratories, they can choose between accreditation, which means that they are supervised by the Croatian Accreditation Agency, or they can be supervised by reference laboratories. For example, Institute has both. We are a reference laboratory for particulate matter and its content, and we are testing laboratory for more than 20 pollutants, including 14 accredited methods. Measurements are carried out at measuring stations. Some stations are part of a national network for monitoring of air quality, which is state funded. And we also have local networks of some towns or counties. and also special purpose stations that are installed in the vicinity of larger pollution sources. And those measurements are funded by the owner of the source pollution. All these data are coming at one place, to the Ministry of Economy and Sustainable Development. Those real-time measurements for automatic instruments, as well as measurements that are doing later in the laboratory, are coming at the same website. And here you can find, for example, for Croatia, what is situation now. You can find raw data, validated data, as well as reports for each day. I think here are data from 2011 and till by now. Every Croatian citizen can see how is air polluted in its area. So now I will show you in some examples how we can assess air quality. I will show it on some examples from previous measurements. The first measurements of air quality were carried out in the 60s in Zagreb. Jasmina already said that in the 50s a lot of large towns suffered from air pollution, especially London, Los Angeles. There were well-known episodes of smog, and it also. So in Croatia, we also wanted to know what is the air quality in our country, and firstly in Zagreb. So Institute carries out measurements of SO2 and black smoke, and it found that levels in the first 5 years were really high. I will show it on the next slide. The problem in that time was we were then part of Yugoslavia. There was no Air Pollution Act, not in Yugoslavia, not in Republic. Air pollution and air quality was not regulated at all. So when the city of Zagreb saw those high results of air pollution, they decided to act by itself, and they prepared two decisions for improving air quality. It was related to reduce the use of coal, because coal was the main energy in the industry and its households at that time, together with wood. So they decided to control emissions of industry. They also decided to build a heating system and a natural gas system and bring it to households. And some other measures mostly related to reduce the use of fossil fuels. So as you can see, the concentrations of SO2 in 70s really drastically dropped, and now the concentrations are so low that even we do not have the need for measure it anymore, because, for example, in Zagreb, SO2 is very close to the detection limit of our methods. But then in 60s, it was really high. I found this graph in the literature for the same period in London. And as you can see, the methodology of measurements was very similar. In that time, we used so-called British standard method for measuring SO2, which was first applied in the United Kingdom. So in that time, concentrations of annual concentrations of sulfur dioxide in 60s in London were about up to 2000, but in Zagreb we had locations with annual concentrations of 400 micrograms per cubic meter or even more, and during winter we had 10 or more days with concentrations higher than 1,000 micrograms per cubic meters, which was far worse than during known London smog episodes from the 50s, but our public was unaware of this problem. But the good was that then those local community decided to put in force some measures, and air quality was really improved. Just for comparison, in those table, when I present you the air quality standards in European Union, now for SO2, we have limit value for 24-hour average. It is 125 micrograms per cubic meter. It was, which means that your daily value must not be lower than 125. And as you can see, in that time, we had annual average lower than that value, which means that a lot of days concentrations were even 10 times higher than it is allowed. But another pollution that we started to measure was nitrogen dioxide. It is present in vehicle exhausts. So you can see some kind of long-term trends of this pollutant in Zagreb. Limit value is 40 micrograms per cubic meter. And you can see that at some station, concentrations decreased over the years, and at some they are really close or up to this value. Problems are stations that are more burdened by traffic. Those 3 stations that are above limit values are situated in the city center and in the western part of the town where the traffic is very intense. But on other stations we record a continuous decrease in concentrations of NO2. Interesting in that, in fact, all of those during those years we had increase in number of cars, but not increase of NO2 concentration, which correlate with the number of cars. That means that those measures that are in charge within European Union regarding the quality of vehicles and so on really are important, because otherwise the concentrations will be much higher. We also measure from the 70 total suspended particles. They show the similar decrease in trend as SO2. Firstly, we measure only total suspended particles, but later scientific evidences show that we should monitor PM10 and PM2.5. And officially, it was changed in Croatia in 2006. But at our institute, we started about 7 years earlier through some scientific projects. As you can see, for PM10, limit value is 40 micrograms per cubic meter for annual average. And after 2014, values at all stations in Zagreb are lower than that value, that limit value. So in this moment, it seems that air quality is okay, but we have here 2 types of limit values. For this limit value, it's okay, but PM10 in Croatia show very pronounced seasonal variations with high concentrations during winter due to the heating season and unfavorable meteorological conditions. Here are concentrations presented not only for Zagreb, but for some other towns in continental part of Croatia. And at all locations we have the same problem, that during winter concentrations are higher than limit value set for 24-hour average, which is 20 micrograms per cubic meters. So according to the European Union legislation, 50 micrograms per cubic meter should not be trespassed more than 35 times over the calendar year. But as you can see, at a lot of locations, we have much more exceedances for some for some towns where we have also industry. There is more than 100 exceedances per year. Only here at our station in the northern part of Zagreb, air quality was good all the time regarding both criteria. Zagreb 1 is measuring station in the center of Zagreb, which is more exposed to traffic, but not to other sources. And the heating is household heating is on the central heating system of Zagreb. So the last year's concentrations are okay, but at all other stations in Zagreb, as well as in other towns in continental Croatia, they are quite high. So that is problem now. And as I said, the new regulations and new air quality guideline, in fact, requires that those air quality standards should be much lower. So we will have a lot of problems with that kind of pollutant. The next one is benzoapyrene. We measure it as a representative of polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. And for it, there is a limit value for annual average, 1 nanogram per cubic meter. As you can see, in some years, the quality is of the second category, in one of the first. It probably depends mostly on this, how much the winter is cold, how much people use. In fact, we thought that in this first period, till, for example, 2018, it seems like decreasing trend. But now we have again elevated concentrations. So we think that it is maybe, although in Zagreb households had natural gas, a lot of households, but it became expensive. So a lot of households again switched to wood, and maybe that is the reason for such increase in concentration in the last 5 years. Benzoapyrene also show pronounced seasonal variations, even more pronounced than it was for PM10. Here is the air quality assessment. Again, only Savitska Cesta is okay, and in the last year, the measuring station in the city center were in the southern part of the time, and in other industrial towns, the air quality is not good relating to this pollutant. We are not the only country which have problems with PM10, with benzoapyrene, with NO2. If you want to know more about air quality in other European countries, you can go to the website of the European Environmental Agency. There you can find annual reports and also data on air quality. And on this link, there is a lot of similar graphs of maps with the list of countries. As you can see, Croatia is here. So a lot of countries already have better air quality. This is example for PM10 and for the number of daily exceedances of 50 micrograms per cubic meter. But as you can see, a lot of surrounding countries also have a similar problem with PM10. There are also in the regulations obligation of measuring some parameters for which there is no limit values. For example, anions and cations and organic elemental carbon. For them, we do not have limit values, but it is very important to measure them because they give us valuable information about potential emission sources. So those data can be used in modeling to assess the influence of some source, or maybe the influence of transbordary transport. Then also there is an obligation to measure ozone precursors such as volatile organic compounds to get better insight in atmospheric chemistry, and also obligation to measure total deposited matter and its content, metals, pHs, mercury, in order to assess influence on the environment. So it is shortly. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to ask. Thank you for your attention.